you can't see how handsome I am, but I'm sure one day you will see me. Just to make sure that we are able to have a stable connection. I'm going to be one of the facilitators for today's section, and this is a section that really focuses on the fundamental knowledge for a business plan. Yesterday we spoke about the approach to or approaches you can employ to identifying business opportunities. So today's session is basically a follow-up to that section, in the sense that once you've identified whatever business opportunity you are pursuing, you need to reduce that into a business plan or some document that will give you an idea of where we need to go. So that's really what we're going to be focusing on today in terms of producing a business plan. So specifically, we're going to be looking at, what are the business plan fundamentals that you need to look at? How and why do you need to set goals and objectives? We're not going to talk about the management and organization of a business as such. It's going to be part of the bigger conversation, but we're going to talk about the operational plan. And within that operational plan, we're going to talk about how you actually deliver whatever you are producing or you are selling, either as a product or as a service. And then we're going to talk about, the financial analysis that you need to conduct to make sure that your business plan is solid. And in there, it's all about the various aspects of your financial health of your organization. And at some point soon thereafter, we're going to talk about your marketing. And instead of talking about banking, we're going to talk about, just the funding requirements that you can look at in terms of funding your business plan. I just want to make sure, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thanks. And then lastly, I'm going to share with you a personal journey that I hope it is worth sharing. Okay, thank you very much. And what I was saying is, at the end or towards the end of the presentation, I will share with you the personal journey that I've been through up to this far, just hopefully to give you a sense of, the motivation and the encouragement that all of us as entrepreneurs, require, because indeed this is a very lonely and difficult journey. So what do we want to achieve at the end of this section? We want to be in a position to identify, gather, and analyze whatever information you require to actually compile a solid and viable business plan, pursuant to the opportunity that you would have identified. And the second outcome is really a skill in terms of formulating whatever operational plan you require in order to deliver either a service or a product or both that you would have identified. So if we just shoot straight into it, why is it that as business people or entrepreneurs, we require a business plan? Now, there's different answers to this question, but at the core of it, it's about opportunities. And specifically, it's about how do you actually package that opportunities, not only for yourself, but for whoever else is going to consume that particular document. How do you quantify that opportunity in order for it to make financial sense or to have whatever impact you want it to have? And how do you sell this particular opportunity, both to people who would be helping you execute that plan, but all those and all the other people who may or you may require to fund your opportunity. And lastly, I suppose having a plan allows you to constantly, modify it, go back and find a way to actually improve it as your circumstances changes. So it is effectively a living document. It's not something that you create once and then you shelve it. Otherwise, it's not a business plan. Of critical importance is to realize that actually a business plan is a fundamental pillar of any strategy that you will deploy subsequent to getting your business up and running. So it is basically a very critical document to getting you started. But what are the questions that you need to ask in order to start formulating the business plan? And the first basic question is, so what is this opportunity that I'm pursuing? What is it? Can I touch it? Can I feel it? Can I visualize it as an individual? And once you've done that for yourself, how do you plan to actually exploit that opportunity? How do you plan to monetize that opportunity? How do you plan to actually respond to that opportunity? Of course, you're going to need the resources. And those resources may be you as an individual, a group of individuals. The question is, who and what do you need to actually exploit that opportunity? And what are the benefits for you, for your community, for your customers, and your stakeholders, your shareholders, if at all you're going to have shareholders? How do you make sure that they see value in the opportunity that you have identified? And how do you make sure that everyone else knows about it? And more importantly, what if it doesn't work? In other words, there's no guarantee. You can plan all you want. It may not work. And if that happens, how did you plan for it? What is the exit strategy that you have in your business plan? Right now, as we all know, businesses are failing left, right, and center. Did you ever stop to ask yourself the question, did I actually adjust my plan in view of the pandemic? Do I have to adjust my plan in view of the pandemic? Because sure as hell, this is not the last pandemic we're going to have, or this is not the last crisis we're going to have. So part of your planning is to think about the worst case scenario. How do I exit if this whole thing fails? Now, I'm going to go through these questions with you guys quickly, but I want you to think about these questions because we're going to come back later to actually see if we cannot answer some of these questions. But as entrepreneurs, we always must ask a few questions about our surroundings. And these questions are in many ways basic, but if you also think about it, they also speak to social challenges that our country faces at the moment. If you dig deep, you will realize that actually there are social challenges that in themselves present opportunities for us as business people or as entrepreneurs. Now, don't be afraid of exploiting an idea, because Albert Einstein said, if at first an idea is not absurd, then there's no hope for it. So dream on, continue to dream, because there's a hope for what could be perceived as a bad idea. So The question is, for me at least, why is it that there's so many shopping centers that are developed and built in townships and not manufacturing plants, for example? We know that our public education system is failing. Are there opportunities in private schooling in the townships? What has this pandemic done in terms of normal human-to-human contact? Therefore, are there opportunities in the call center space? We know our country is struggling to meet the requirements for providing adequate housing. What is being built right now is not enough. The rate of informal settlements is increasing more than what the government can actually provide. Are there opportunities for containerized living or some form of prefabricated living, for example? Most of us come from townships, and we know that what you find from a land perspective in townships is largely unusable land. But why that is a problem, as entrepreneurs, can we see an opportunity in there? You have farming right now that no longer requires the soil. Can we exploit that opportunity? We complain daily around how bad the taxi industry is, and it is bad. But do we have the brave among us who would want to change the situation, at least from a customer service perspective, and say, I'm going to make a difference in this case? We know that right now, companies, as a result of the pandemic, are looking at saving costs. What can you do to provide solutions that actually help companies save those costs? So these are some of the questions that we could be asking ourselves, and I'm sure we are. And we're going to come back later to deal with these type of questions later on. Now, you've now identified the opportunity. You now need to get started. And you need to be prepared for the hard work that's going to come. And I thank you very much for having made the time to join us, because what it does tell us is that you've already made the decision, or you actually are expanding on the decision you've made a long time ago to go there and do your own thing. And things will go bad, but at least you are ahead of the rest who's really not doing anything. But the hard work really comes in when you start to then say, okay, how do I start operating this business? How do I position myself, or how do I position this opportunity in the competition? How do I make sure that I'm going to be different as a business? Who else is playing in this space that I've identified? And really, unless you have a completely new product or a new invention, chances are you're either going to be entering an existing market, and if that is the case, how do you make sure that you are able to generate traffic to your business? And gone are the days actually of competition. How do you make sure that you dominate the market? All of these are the type of questions that your business plan is supposed to help answer for you to position yourself competitively within the market space. There's various techniques that you can employ. The popular one is your SWOT analysis, but there's a range of techniques that we're not going to cover today. But there's ways and means to answer these questions yourself. Now, You've now identified the opportunity. You've actually started on the journey. You obviously need to then decide, what is it that I want to achieve with this whole thing? What goals do I have? What goals and objectives do I have to make sure that I exploit this opportunity, to make sure that I monetize this opportunity? Now, what's common in answering this question is what is called the SMART principle. You need to be smart. And what it means really is define for yourself what is needed in very, very precise terms. And in this case, you can use numbers. You cannot achieve what you cannot measure. And in corporate, you hear people saying, people do what you measure, not what you say. That's exactly it. If you don't measure, people will not actually help you achieve those objectives. You need to set for yourself stretch targets, not just a target, not an average target. Set yourself a stretch target, but achievable nonetheless. Do you have the capacity to actually respond or meet that particular objective? Decide for yourself, how much effort do I have to expend for me and my team to achieve this particular goal? And more importantly, by when do I want to achieve this particular goal? Now, the difference between an objective and a goal is really that an objective is typically abstract, is typically large, and a goal is much more specific. So in this example, you may want to be a leader in the industry that you have chosen for yourself, but that's actually not enough. You need to then say, well, for myself to be a leader, it means that I've got 100% market share. And I want to have achieved that market share by a particular date. I want to make sure that come what may, I have achieved this particular goal. Without this kind of planning, you are likely not to achieve what you set yourself to achieve. Now, you've now set your goals. You've now identified your objectives, but you still need to identify, so how do I establish myself in the market? And that's about defining for yourself your unique identity. And your identity is both internal and external. Internally, you need to decide for yourself, what is the picture of the company that I want to define or to establish now and in the future? And that's really not for you or for your customers, it's not for your customers. It is largely for your internal stakeholders. And your internal stakeholders would be your employees, who must actually help you execute on this vision. Externally, you still need to communicate your unique identity. And that is captured in your mission. And really that's about your reason for existence. Why do I exist? Why is it that people will stop buying from X and come from me? A lot of companies do this exercise. A lot of us as entrepreneurs do this exercise, but it's largely an academic exercise. We go out and do it and put it on the wall and then hope that people are going to execute it. So as an entrepreneur, it is not enough to put this on a piece of paper. It's actually to live it. You must actually embody it. As an entrepreneur, especially as a founder, people must actually see that you are actually in reality walking the talk. So it is very, very critical that you spend enough time on this, because in actual fact, it will define who you are and what you stand for. Now, you need obviously to make sure that whatever it is that you want to do can be quantified. As I said earlier on in my introduction, I'm going to give you a very, very basic and high level view of how you need, or what it is that you need to do to quantify your opportunity. As part of our modules, there is a whole section, a whole course that deals with the financial management, of a new venture. So we're not going to spend a lot of time here. I would encourage you to pay attention and make sure that you are part of the rollout of the financial module going ahead. But effectively, you need to understand what resources you're going to require to actually execute your opportunities. And part of that is to then decide, how am I going to fund those resources? And you capture that in your budget. The next thing you need to do then is to say, well, what are my revenue drivers? Sorry, what are my revenue drivers? What are my revenue streams? And what it is that I need to do to generate that revenue, and how much of it? And what will it cost me to actually generate that revenue? It costs money to make money, we always say, but in business language, what we're saying is, what are the costs that you're going to have to expend to actually generate that revenue? Your company obviously needs to run on a daily basis. There's expenses that you're going to have to outlay. What are those expenses, and what are the thresholds that you mustn't exceed? What sort of cash flow do you need on a monthly basis to actually sustain your business? And of course, the stronger your balance sheet, the better. But the idea is, you need to identify for yourself, what are the elements that actually will strengthen my balance sheet? And what are the elements that are going to actually weaken my balance sheet? And how do I make sure that I'm constantly looking at those elements that have the potential to degrade my balance sheet? Now, typically, once you've done such analysis, the outcome of that is your profit and loss statement. Sometimes it's called your income statement. You've got your cash flow, cash flow statement detailing the ins and outs of your cash, and also, as I said, your balance sheet. Now you understand what it is that you have, and really what it is that you can take to your investors, to your funders, and also potentially to your employees, and say, guys, this is actually the business from a financial perspective. If we are not careful with our costs, this is the outcome. If we are not careful with how we spend money, this is the outcome. If we are not careful in how we use our assets or not use them, this is the outcome. So this is not, again, an academic exercise. It's about sharing with your stakeholders, both internal and external, your financial position and what you want to achieve going forward. And this transparency is not something that is done in most businesses, because people believe that actually this is sort of a confidential information, but it's actually not confidential, because if your employees do not know what it is that we're aiming at financially, chances are they will not actually face in the same direction that you are facing, because they do not know. So it is not an academic exercise. Make sure that once you have this sorted out, you share this, not only this, but your vision, your goals that you are aiming for, your mission. Make it transparent, because without your resources, without your team knowing what your intentions are, they're not going to be they're not going to be able to join you in this journey. Now, you now have your business plan, you now have your financial modeling within that business plan. You obviously need to fund that business. Now, you can either do that out of your own pocket. You can do that by looking at friends and family. But typically, you would look at your private and public institutions. Now, I've listed the obvious ones. There's quite a lot, but the idea is there's a lot that our government is trying in terms of funding businesses, and you can look at the DTI, the IDC, the KfW Development, which is a German bank that is very active in South Africa. You've got the KZN Growth Fund, etc., etc. Now, you also got banks, which typically, have a different set of requirements than your DFIs. But it is still worth approaching them and see what they think of your business plan. In fact, sometimes you may want to approach them not necessarily to generate the funding that you're hoping for, but to actually get feedback on your business plan, because banks are very good at providing detailed feedback around your business plan. Now, the one thing that we don't do as entrepreneurs is thinking about insurance. Purely, hi, can you still hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Can
you hear
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. So what we typically don't do as entrepreneurs is that we hardly think about insurance unless there's a salesperson, wanting to sell you something. But it is absolutely critical that you somehow identify your critical risk areas within your business and say, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? How do I make sure that there's continuity? Now, there's always the possibility of theft. Doesn't matter how big or small your business is, whether you're a profit or non-profit. If you are supplying goods, there is insurance that you can secure to secure your goods in transit. Or if you are in the storage business, for example, you need some form of insurance to insure the goods that you are storing. If you are the only one, or you rely on too few individuals to generate your revenue, what happens if those individuals leave or are unable to help you execute, or if you yourself are no longer able to generate the insurance, the revenue that you require? Key person dependency is one such insurance that you can look at. Business interruptions. We know now that the COVID pandemic has wreaked havoc in businesses. Do you have such insurance in your business? Are you able to approach your insurer right now and say, listen, I've been paying my premiums for the last 8 years, last 20 years. I'm now unable to proceed. Can you fund this gap for me? I know, and I'm sure all of us know, that right now there's about 500 companies that have taken insurance companies to court because insurance companies are unable to pay. They didn't plan for such a pandemic. Nonetheless, there are others that are being paid right now. So you need this insurance. If your business involves a lot of travel, either in terms of your employees, yourself, you need to make provision for that. What happens if one of you guys gets involved in a travel-related incident, or they get hospitalized abroad? Are you able to come to the party and say, listen, don't worry, we will cover you? What if your employee damages a customer good? Are you covered for accidental damage? What about your electronic equipment? So all of these things are things that, whether you like it or not, you need to make provision for in your financials. Fortunately, you don't have to take all of them, and they're not very expensive, but it is prudent that you make provisions for these things because you really never know. Sorry, my screen has just frozen now. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
Yes, sir.
The screen is just frozen for now. Give me a moment. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, sorry about that. Now, having decided what you're going to insure, etc., etc., you now have your financial plan. Obviously, you now need to deliver. You now need to deliver in terms of whatever product you may be selling or whatever service you may be offering. For that, you need an operational plan. And at the core of it, the operational plan is supposed to help you define really who is doing what in terms of delivering that service or product, what it is that we need to do on a daily basis that will take us to delivering the product or the service. And what suppliers do we need and how are we going to use them? What service providers do we need and how are we going to use them pursuant to us delivering our service or product? What sort of capacity from a labor perspective do I need to deliver my service or my product? And at the end of the day, you need to be able to say, with all of these in place, I will be able to deliver my service, my product, in terms of the quality that is required at the right time, at the right cost, or at the right pricing. So it's also a critical component from a delivery perspective that as entrepreneurs, we are mindful of the delivery mechanisms that we need to put in place to deliver our products or services. Now, obviously, you then need to then say, well, how do I make sure that people buy my product? How do I make sure that people are able to know what it is that I offer as a company? For that, you need a marketing plan, which hopefully it's highly detailed, thoroughly researched, and well written. Now, typically, you can do this in many ways, but at the core of it, you need to decide what is the purpose of this marketing plan? What is the situation that it tries to address? What is the marketing strategy embedded within this plan? What are the tactical programs that I need to deploy? More importantly, do I have the money to fund this marketing? And how do I know that I've actually achieved my objectives? And what else do I need to make sure that there is some return on investment on my marketing spend? Now, a lot of us know a lot about marketing, but there's very little support in many organizations for marketing. Yes, sales, you do find a lot of investment when it comes to sales, but marketing remains a very elusive part of business activity that is not well done in most businesses, let alone small businesses. There is a section in the module, in the course again, that deals in much more detail around how you can actually execute on your marketing spend. But in general, when you then focus yourself on your marketing strategy within your plan, you need to be able to then ask yourself the question, who is my buyer and how can I make sure that I bring them to buy my product? That's what a marketing strategy is supposed to do. In other words, you've set yourself some goals, and how do you make sure that you will achieve those goals using your marketing strategy? Now, there's a range of tactics that you can employ, which I mentioned in the previous slides. A lot of us are aware of these: events, direct mail, email, social media, webinars. In fact, webinars are becoming very big business now in this pandemic. And there's a lot of money to be made around webinars. But as a marketing tool, how do you expose your business using webinars, seminars, or even partnerships? So all of these tactics are critical. It is unlikely that you're going to employ all of them. It is ideal, and you're going to need money to deliver on these. But of critical importance is making sure that you are able to track the delivery around your marketing spend. Now, before I share with you, hopefully, what could be some food for thought, I'd like us to go back to the questions that I asked earlier on. And really, I'm opening the floor for a bit of conversation. I am aware of the time. I'm not gonna take a lot, but I would want to engage with you and see whether there's any merit in even beginning to ask ourselves these questions. So the one thing that has always bugged me, not in a bad way, is the sprawling shopping centers in our townships, which in many ways create jobs and bring convenience and all of that, while at the same time killing spaza shops. But in general, that's all that is being built in our townships. And why not manufacturing plants? And I'm using manufacturing plants here advisedly, but can we engage with this question and see whether there's actually an opportunities that can be identified in this particular question? Anyone?
Sorry, can you kindly repeat that question?
It says here, why is it only shopping centers are built in townships and not manufacturing plants? Now, manufacturing plants could be other types of businesses, your packing house, and non-toxic manufacturing, actually, or assembly plants. Why do you think that is the case?
Okay, let's give it a shot, Tabakenna. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. I'll talk from a manufacturing capacity perspective. Yeah? So if you look at our townships, I mean, they're situated away from key economic drivers, you know. For example, the logistic hubs. What I meant by the logistic hubs, I mean, if it's a car assembly, you want to be closer to the port, you know, so that you can be able to transport your goods, I mean, that are going offshore, the cars that are going export, you know, I mean, the time to get there is shorter, but also if you're going to be transporting them by rail as well, you know, you must be closer to where the infrastructure is available, you know. And if you look at the quality, at the availability or the capacity or the quality of the rail infrastructure now in the townships, as an example, is completely destroyed over time, you know, it's not existent. So those are the things that make the manufacturers or the investors not invest in places like the townships, you know, where theoretically you'll say labor will be cheap, and then you'll be bringing the manufacturing base closer to where people live. But you cannot decouple that from the other considerations, which is the logistics, the transportation. How are you going to transport those things afterwards once you produce those? Those goods. Which in this case is the cars. Yeah. So the shopping centers. Yeah, I mean we live in an open economy, you know. Being in an open economy means everyone can be able to set up his or her operation in any area. So what these big retailers did, 20 years ago, they took advantage of the fact, that you've got very fragmented SMME sector in the township, fragmented in terms of their own organization, but fragmented in terms of the services they offer, fragmented in terms of the value they offer, fragmented in terms of the products they offer. So by virtue of the size of these retailers and their experience and their strong balance sheet, you alluded to balance sheet there, and the cash flows, they were able to give a one-stop shop service for the market, for that market, you know. Then in the process, killing off your small SMMEs, because now they can't compete on price, they can't compete on quality, they can't compete on service. Exactly the things that you alluded to. So those will be my insights in terms of the shopping centers. It's just basically a question of an open economy. Who's got the biggest paycheck, who's got the deepest pockets, and then who's able to offer better service at value, to the market. And the market was there waiting for that kind of service. Because if you look at the total retail sector, FMCG in particular, what happened? It didn't contract, it didn't shrink. It actually exploded. So meaning that there was a latent demand that was in there, that was in the township, that was not being untapped because of the variety of the products and the services that were being offered. So obviously people wouldn't travel 30 km to go to Joburg from Katlehong, for example, to go to do banking. So rather do what? Then rather stay at home, not even do that banking. But now such services are brought closer to you. So as a result, you don't only offer food, but you offer food, banking services, clothing, insurance, cars, all those things in one. So that allowed. It means there was a demand. That was there. That was untapped.
Yeah. Okay. No,
Okay.
thanks, Tabo. Thanks, Tabo. Anyone on this one? Do we have a different view?
Yes, I do. I actually have a different view. I agree fully with Diana, but I think another reason for not having manufacturing plants is to take a very important consideration on the environmental impact of what the manufacturing plants brings closer to the townships. It's considering that there are a lot of people staying there as well. So manufacturing plants have a lot of environmental impacts, especially towards residential areas. Everything else with the shopping centers, I agree with the last point. Really agree with the last point why they decide to build shopping centers instead of manufacturing plants. But I think for manufacturing plants, it's a lot of consideration.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah. Look, all the points that are being raised are valid. The question for me still is, there is a case to be made for other type of investments in the townships. I agree with you in terms of the toxicity of manufacturing that can be harmful. But there's a whole range of manufacturing that doesn't produce toxicity, as an example, or as a case in point. But in the interest of time, I'm not gonna dwell on this. Can we go to the second question and really find out whether you believe there are opportunities for private schooling in townships? In the light of what is potentially a public education system that is unlikely to improve for years to come. Anyone else who wants to take this one? Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, we are. So maybe you can that.
All right. You don't have to. We don't have to go each by each. But anyone who wants to answer any of the questions listed on the slide.
Maybe if I can
We
just
entrepreneurs, we need to ask ourselves ridiculous questions. Let's attempt to answer these.
Tabakenna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
With regards to the public education system, if you check now, there's a rise of a number of private schools. If you check now around your Roslyn, Maboneng, and the likes, Spark Schools is gaining momentum, and I've seen a couple of those. Actually, their school is basically those container classes, you know. So people even left the comfort of brick and mortar to take their kids to container classes, just because it's Spark Schools directly, not far from a location, you know. So there is also an opportunity for these private schooling. There's a number of franchises that are out there that people can tap into and take them closer to private schools. In any case, some of the kids from township travel like 36 kilometers to come to these private schools in town. So there is merit for this.
Thanks, Kabelo. Anyone else?
Mr. Tabakenna.
Yes.
Now I would even just ask another question, perhaps not even answer this one. But
yes.
If you allow me,
yes.
Why is it so that the question regarding the private schools, for instance, why is it so that we haven't seen private schools by Black people? So I've seen your Curo in Mamelodi and in Soshanguve and all of that. The real question here is that if township is Black people staying there, you should start seeing Black entrepreneurs coming up with schools. I've had conversation with some very bold people who say they want to do this. That's the first question. Maybe in it's almost like just to jinx what you're asking, because these are real, honest questions that we have stopped asking, or we have accepted that is the reason why certain things are happening in a particular way. If you take an example of the issue of manufacturing, every single township, whether it's Soweto or whatever, even now, they have. Yes? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, ladies and gentlemen? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So the issue of whether there is toxicity or not in the townships for manufacturing, remember, every single township.
We lost you there for a moment, but we can hear. Yes, we can.
Hey, sorry, I was saying every single township, or in terms of urban planning, when they design these things, particularly in the last 25 years, they've redesigned them to an extent that there should still be a place for manufacturing hub for businesses to come. The issue is there is no capital that people are willing to put in. So there are very few people.
We lost you, Tandy.
Tabakenna, I think
Is it only Tabakenna or everyone?
I think we can hear you very clearly. Yeah.
So it's only you, Tabakenna, who can hear me. So if you can forgive me. So there are real, honest issues that we need to ask ourselves. What role are we playing as entrepreneurs? There is a book that was written by some American-based Nigerian author called The Capitalist Nigger. It made lots of waves some time back. And it talked about how the African continent, it's a consumer continent. You remember that book? The Capitalist Nigger. He argued, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
The Capitalist Nigger argued that why is it so that the biggest musicians or the best musicians in the world usually would be black people, and yet you have never heard a single instrument that is designed by a black guy? Why? If we can find a question to that answer, I believe it won't be very far from answering the question, why do we have so many shopping centers?
No, I can hear you. I can hear you.
All right, thanks, Tabakenna. But can everyone hear me though? Apart from Tabakenna?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yes. So these questions that he's raising here are a lot more closer to home than they really are, or than we make them to be, because they're raising issues of. Yesterday, one of the books that I sent, it's called Blue Ocean Strategy. Blue Ocean Strategy talks about how not to make competition your primary target. So in other words, can you create new business opportunities? These are the questions he's asking here to say, can we see, it's not even about focusing on the two things, whether we can have manufacturing or shopping centers. No. It's to just show the trail of money that between where people stay, there is where people shop, there should also be where people work. Because money, like water, wherever it goes,